Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to VirtualPeer. VirtualPeer is all about bringing people together around shared professional goals and challenges. Larry is my guest for today. He is the founder of Retirement Warriors, a community for people nearing retirement and who want to set up a business. Larry is also a member of our Starting a Business VirtualPeer group. So welcome, Larry. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you making the time. It's fantastic.
Thank you, May. It's always fun to have a chat with you, so I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, we're going to try and make the most of the next 20 to 30 minutes. And so let's start by maybe you sharing a little bit about your background with us.
Okay, I have a mixed business background. I started with the advertising agency work out of Los Angeles, out of college, and first account was Honda motorcycles, which was a lot of fun for me. I spent 5 years doing that. And then I went to another agency in Los Angeles for the Toyota car and truck business and stayed with them for 5 years, which was another interesting involvement because I was on the account management side, and you have a creative group, of course, in the media department, and you've got to coordinate all the elements of a campaign and work with different people with different agendas, different styles. So it's a challenge, and then meet with a customer, you know, to present the campaign and get an approval and get it on air or whatever. But it was an exciting world, busy as hell, always having assignments and deadlines and issues like that. And it was a challenge for me, and did some traveling as well. But I felt that I was off track a little bit. I always felt I wanted to do something that was more directly involved with people development or human resources. And thinking about that, I felt I had an idea to start my own. It was actually a career management, maybe search firm combination business. I called it Steward Career Group. Yeah. And I left Los Angeles. I met the woman of my life on a trip to New York once when we were sponsoring the Watkins Glen Grand Prix for Toyota. And she was in the magazine publishing business, and we met. And, you know, the magic happened, and I felt, okay, this is meaningful. And with that, I ended up moving to New York, starting my little practice there. And that was a big transition, you know, going from state that I was born and raised in and leaving LA behind. I had to sell the condo I had and my car, and I gave away my cat to a friend, and clean slate, you know, I just jumped and ended up in New York City. So different, not even having a car and living there, you know, wearing coats and gloves and encountering snow days and all that. But in the process, even though I got some activity with what I was trying to do, it was difficult to get traction because I just didn't have a network. I was, you know, had to do everything at once. But the good thing was that I learned about this corporate outplacement field that I had no understanding of. And I was surprised, but I had enough experience behind me to convince them that I would be a good hire. So I got brought into that group as a VP to work with executives in mid-career transition that were being sponsored by their companies to go into our program. Very established, sophisticated approach to a great human resource program that companies endorse. You know, they felt it's difficult to let people go no matter what the circumstances. And if we could bring in an outplacement firm to meet with these people, give them assurances that they're in good hands and that we will take them through the transition and ideally get them into a equal, if not better position than one that they had. And often that's what happened. And I spent probably a good 12 years in that business, starting with actually the largest firm in the world doing that. They had offices all over the world. Drake Beam Moore, headquartered in New York City. And that's where I got my basic kind of coaching background. It's not the pure coaching that you have as a personal career coach. It was more consulting, I guess you would call it, you know, where you're working with someone who you're providing office space for and all the administrative support and encouraging them to stay on course and make progress. And but a big part of that too was the entrepreneurial program that we had, helping people become consultants or start a business or buy a franchise. And that really got me thinking about, you know, wanting to establish that for myself again. I tried before and it wasn't quite taking off. But then after 12 years of doing that and moving between a couple of companies, I enjoyed that work, but I wanted to do something on my own. And what I ended up deciding on, of all things, was to open a home improvement business, because all along I had probably 5 or 6 homes that I had purchased, some in California and some in New York with my wife at that time. And I always enjoyed fixing them up and doing things around the property. And I thought I could easily become a home improvement contractor. I had the tools, I had the interest and the ability in the workshop and all that. So I got involved in that. I spent.
No, so you got distracted, Larry.
I got off course a little bit, but I thought, this is my business. I own it. I can do it my way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then, of course, I'm not using technology very much, maybe to send my invoices out. And I got away from all that for so many years. And then, as I approached my retirement years, I was feeling the aches and pains of climbing ladders and lifting things. And I thought, I can't do this forever. I still want to work. So I better think of a better long-term plan. And that's when my wife said to me, what about coaching? You really like that. You know, why don't you go back to that? And I said, you're right. That makes a lot of sense. I want to do that. I'm making a commitment to do that. And that was 6 years ago, I think. So why it took so long is because we wanted to make a relocation as well. And we left the New York area. We primarily lived in Connecticut, but then we sold our house and anticipating to relocate. So we were renting in New York, just outside of Connecticut. So, and she had a horse and was very involved in riding. And so we came up with a plan. We said, we want to leave the Northeast, find a warmer climate, keep our costs down, and maybe for the first time in our life together, we can come up with a way to work together. So the idea was, she knows about horses, I know about property management. What if we can find horse farms down in South Carolina that need help? You for horses, me for taking care of the property. So she went online, found, you know, more opportunities than I expected, and we ended up taking an offer. And our first move was to a place called Johnsonville, South Carolina, way out in the middle of nowhere, because it was a place inland from Myrtle Beach, a more popular area. But this place, Johnsonville, used to have industry. Most of it left, you know, and they had tobacco fields and one McDonald's in town, and not much to offer except this beautiful 200-acre horse farm with 8 horses.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
And riding trails and corrals and jumping courses. And they had vehicles to use. They even gave us a 3-bedroom house to live in with a pickup truck in the garage for us to use. You know, it was a nice setup. And their house, they had a swimming pool. But, you know, we worked our butts off too. We were working like 6 days a week.
So Larry, sorry to interrupt, but did you then, so basically this was another business that you ended up starting with your partner?
Well, it was a transition step. Susanna was a publisher, magazine publisher, which meant she was mostly working with the sales staff and getting advertisers for the magazines. When she left that, she became an independent writer and editor, mostly for websites. So she carried that with her, and that was her plan. And my plan was to start my own coaching practice, but I had to put it on hold while we were still earning money to get to South Carolina and get more settled. So we spent 1.5 years there, which was interesting experience, and it worked. And we saved a lot of money because we didn't have to pay rent, you know, and we didn't have a place to spend it really either. And we enjoyed the work we were doing. But
Oh, okay. So, I mean, like, it's an interesting thing, you know, when you have this vision around starting a business, what I see you and your partner doing is you're thinking longer term in terms of, okay, so this is where we want to end up, but these are the steps that we need to take in order to help get us closer to that particular goal. So that's why so identifying this opportunity on this horse farm, and then you both working on it rent free, I guess, maintaining the property, looking after the horses, enabled you to save enough money to then take that next step, right? So you had that bigger vision in mind all the time, but you were thinking, okay, how are we going to get there?
yeah, and what I had really started studying was my own situation, which was my transition to retirement,
Mm.
which everyone will reach at some point, and
Yes.
you don't know what to expect until you get there. And it'll probably change by the time you have to do this, but um, it's an unknown territory. And then I
It
realized,
is, yeah.
that I wanted to continue working. So the business I was doing in my contract work, it didn't change. I mean, now I'm retired, still doing that work. It's like nothing's changed. But as I researched the process of retirement, I learned that a lot of people wanted to continue earning an income.
Mm.
So they were looking for work, and I realized that, well, that's what I'm doing, and I'm retired. I'm a good role model for these people. So I focused on that aspect of it.
So,
Um,
so Larry, I mean, we're getting into that sort of the next sort of question, which is around the aspirations, you know, that you have for, you know, retirement warriors, and why you set up retirement warriors. And you mentioned just now that you wanted to continue working, and you're finding that other people were also wanting to continue working. What are some of the reasons, you know, what are some of the reasons behind why people might want to continue working as they approach, or, you know, as they sort of approach retirement, or as they are retired?
yeah, it's a good point. There are various reasons. The most obvious is people didn't prepare as well as they should have for retirement. And when you realize if you're healthy, you could live in your retirement years for 30 years. That's a heck of a long time. The whole structure of retirement and Social Security was developed in the 50s or something, where people didn't live as long as we do now. And it was expected that they worked hard, and now it's time for them to take advantage of the savings they have in Social Security and retire and relax. And then 3 years later, you pass away or whatever. Now we're living so long, people with all of the economic circumstances, not to mention the recession that happened that really hurt my wife and I. I mean, we were trying to sell our house at that time, and that recession hit. So we got clobbered with that. And a
Are we
lot of
talking about the 2008 recession? Yeah.
2008 and 9, when
Yeah.
we went through that, and stock market investments and other things we had going were just crushed. So that was like our nest egg getting squeezed.
Yeah.
But my thought was retirement and people who want to work, and it's not only to make income, but a lot of people realize who could have a life of leisure that they're bored. They've been a professional, they've been in charge of something meaningful with purpose, and now they step away from it. They don't wear their coat and tie anymore, and they're not recognized as anyone that can be identified as doing something, and they feel lost. They want to get involved again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They may do some volunteer work, or join a small startup and be more of a guide for a company like that, or whatever. It's a different path, but they're not motivated by money as much as having a purpose again. So that's the kind of audience I want to appeal to. But I tell you,
Sorry.
I just want to mention that now that this coronavirus has hit and everybody's at home, and you look at what's happening with the economy, which is depressing to think about, it made me reflect further on this target of mine, because I have been hosting a Facebook group, and we have about 135 people who've showed up and signed on for this, and it's called Working in Retirement. So that drew people in that want to do just that, but they're primarily focused on getting a job. And we don't have the kind of dialogue that I'd like to have, the back and forth that we're doing now here. That's why this platform to me is going to change that whole approach to being connected with this audience that I want. But I want to shift it from getting a job to starting a business. Make sure that the people coming into it will be much like myself, someone who has a professional background and really wants the independence of having a home office and a service that meets some important need of a group that they could target. It's exactly what I'm doing, and I could relate to that. And the more I've laid that out, and I did this just over the weekend, I have a new name for the group, from retired warriors to, I would call it the Experience Plus community, where I'm attracting people who have a lifetime of experience because they're retired. And I don't want to call them, seniors or boomers, whatever, but emphasize the experience they have and how they can use that to figure out what audience do you want to help that has a need here and a challenge, and understand the benefits of having your own business like that from the convenience of your home versus trying to get a job as a senior, which is very difficult. I mean, there's still a lot of ageism out in the marketplace. And the people that I'm dealing with now are still using the old techniques of trying to reshape their resume and answer ads. And it's like, that's not going to work. If anything,
it's a tough one. That's a real tough one, because I mean, I get what you said earlier, which is, a lot of the time, because people are living so much longer now, we all want to contribute. We all feel that we can contribute for so much, so much knowledge and experience and so much longer. And, throughout our lives, what we do shapes who we are. It's a big part of our identity. And so to feel that just because you hit the age of 60 or 65, that, that's it, you're retired, you can go on a holiday, send yourself on a beach and stuff like that. That's fine for some people, but actually quite a lot of people need more than that. They need more than that to define, in terms of who they are as, as a whole person. So yeah, totally. And I'm just thinking in terms of what you were just saying now about rebranding Retirement Warriors. I think that's a really good move, because it's shifting the focus, isn't it? It's helping shift people's mindset around, no, we're not actually retirees who are looking at starting a business or starting work. We are people who have a huge amount of experience that we can share and give back, and that has value out there, right?
Well
So
said.
so in terms of like helping people shift the mindset, that's going to be a little bit trickier, because everyone has slightly different thresholds, don't they? So some people feel more comfort around working for someone.
True.
How will you help shift that mindset for people?
Well, I'm going to emphasize everything you just said about the value of that experience they have, and the opportunity to really control their life in a way where they can make this happen. They can create this opportunity versus, what's the option they have to try to get a job, which is still possible. I'm not eliminating that, but I'm just saying it is a challenge and difficult, and you'd have to use completely different techniques. And my whole thought before under Retirement Warriors was showing them how to effectively network by finding small businesses or, those pockets of interest that they have, and then making the connection at a lower level and doing all of that good preliminary information search and conversation activity that would produce something to happen. And I expect that person may show up in this group as well, but the emphasis will be to show them the overall benefits in terms of not only creating a good practice, but the benefits of feeling the satisfaction of helping people go through a challenge, and being able to support that. And then you bring up a good point. They'll have to deal with issues like, maybe feeling isolated by working from home and working with technology, which is going to be another challenge. But the point I will make is that this platform under Mighty Networks is the perfect incubator in that I could see these people doing exactly what we're doing here. You know, everyone in the peer group is developing a community. So people I bring in would be in the same category, and the structure is here for them to quickly take those elements that were provided to put it online. And then I could see with a growing group of individuals, independent small service consultants in my group, to be able to promote the Experience Plus community to the outside world, to tell that audience that we have people here that have all these services, and we have it organized now for you to find particular interests that may help you. So we could serve as a promotion tool for the people that I've, you know, prepared to start their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of feel like there's something there too around, you know, meeting people where they are. So, you know, you talked about, you know, quite a few people might want to still continue looking for work, like looking for work for an organization. I think there's something around understanding what are some of the drivers that sit behind them wanting to pursue that particular path versus the options that you're outlining. And then there's, you know, and I'm just thinking that in terms of starting a business, maybe it's also about redefining what that business could look like for people, you know, because people can still be, you could start like you did a DIY, a home improvement kind of business, or it could be a property maintenance business, but it could also be, you know, a freelance kind of environment where it's not, it doesn't have to be something big. When you start a business, you can actually just work independently and be an independent contractor or a freelancer around a niche area. So that could help maybe shift people's perspective around what it means to start a business, because it can be as small or as big as you want it to be.
Absolutely. And that is the whole point that I want to put their focus on, that the process is similar, whether you're going to go for a job or start something on your own. You have to do your research, understand what you have to offer, what's unique about you, what your strengths are, and then what audience can you appeal to. And it may be a certain company that would like that talent on their end, or in addition to that, I would want them to know, even for you people that are focused on getting a job or working for a small or large company, whatever, don't overlook the fact that you could also go down this other path of starting something on your own as a contractor, consultant, or your own business in that regard. And then that's where the mind shift begins to move from job to on my own. And I think that once they see the framework of where we're operating this platform under Mighty Network and the way it is set up to accommodate us who are, I mean, my main concern trying to get launched was dealing with creating a website. I took courses in WordPress and had to do it twice, you know, just to really try to figure it out. And I still didn't get it going. And then I learned about Mighty Networks, and I thought, wow, this is what I've been looking for. You know, it's got all the structure, the components, and you follow the course, and here you are. And I should mention also, I was just lucky that you started peer groups too, because this was so timely for me to engage with you and the group here, because it shows us how difference between Facebook and what we can do here. Doing this video today has given me the experience very directly, how valuable this is, because we're face to face. We're really getting into this subject deeply and importantly. And you can do that in Facebook, but here it's just, I think, the way it should be run. And I want to have as much video involvement in my community as possible, certainly with workshops that I would offer and courses and showcasing members and so forth, but also in just encouraging people to hook up together and use Zoom, to have those discussions and really make it meaningful and warm and engaging.
Exactly. Exactly. Because I think with technology now, there is no excuse really not to have meaningful collaboration and connection, right? The thing about virtual peer is that it's not so much about the content, because a lot of social media is all about content consumption. It's more about the conversation. It's really about the conversation.
And when you mention collaboration, it could mean that people in this group, as they meet, would discover that there could be someone next to them there that they could collaborate in a business venture.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would encourage that as well, and look for good case histories to present, to say, look how these two have done it, So it's going to be fun. And by the way, one of the issues that I had mentioned to you before is what to do with this Facebook group, because it got a little complicated. It wasn't my group to begin with. Well, I went back to that lady that was the parent of another retirement site, and I engaged with her originally, and she said, I'd like to get articles from you and so forth, and we did that. And then I suggested I'd like to start a separate group for those general people in your group that want to start, want to work. And so she allowed me to do that. So I got back to her and told her about my new plans, and I invited her that she could have a part of this as well, to come in and run some group, classes or whatever. And she wasn't in favor of that because it wasn't her desire to be so much involved in those who want to work. She's doing a different part of it. So she gave me her blessings and said, take it.
Go for it.
And I opened the door. So I've got 135 potential new members sitting there.
Well, that's fantastic, Larry. See, that was it's always hard to know when to have that kind of conversation. And there's so much that plays up in our minds around how that conversation will, turn out. But, you tested some of your assumptions, and you just went in there and spoke candidly about what you were doing, and invited her in, and found that she's not on the same page as you, but she was very open to you offering it to the group. So that's fantastic. That's a great outcome.
I didn't know what to expect, but I thought, I'm doing it, and if she wants to go with me, fine. If not, then I hope she's going to be okay to, just say, run with it, which she did.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And now, so I'm right at that point where I'm preparing a plan to make that communication to the group. Mm-hmm. And I think that this will be a test to see if the premise I'm talking about now will be strong enough to convince them you've been looking for work, and what I want to do is shift slightly away from that to demonstrate to all of you that there is another option that you should really give some important consideration to. The process to get there would be the same to get a job, but look at the environment now in terms of getting work. 20 million people are out of work now, and the economy is upside down. It doesn't mean that the challenge of starting a business is any simpler, but it certainly gives you the control, and you can do it from the convenience of your house. And there's so much benefit to that in terms of saving money for traveling and just the issue of commuting, it all adds up. And with technology, now they're going to have concerns about that, but I want to then introduce them. I want to make the appeal to say, look, just come in as a free member to our platform, take a look, get familiar with all of the elements that I'm talking about, and then compare that to your other options. And we could certainly talk about getting work again, but my emphasis is going to be to tell you what I believe to be the better option, and that is having the opportunity to start something on your own, because if you're talking about income potential, it's unlimited. It depends on how much you want to put into it and how successfully you can get started and grow your business. There's no income level like getting a job and you're locked into a wage and you could be fired in 6 months. You can't control that. It's not in your control. Your own business is, though, and if you do it right, you would be surprised that you don't, even though you could reach a worldwide audience, you don't need that many people to make a good living.
No, that's right. You don't, as long as your pricing's right.
Pricing right. But I mean, I was just working this morning on an example I would want to include, like someone who would start a practice of helping people learn how to paint with oil, say.
Mm-hmm.
It's technical, but if they had a class that cost $65 for 4 weeks or something like that, and then how many people would you, who were following you and take the course, would require an income? You know, you start adding the numbers up and you realize just that little slice, you know, could be very effective. Not to mention that they could then issue products or an ebook or a videotape, or, you know, those income streams that can be added on once they get involved and get their technology set up. So that's the big picture. And I think once people look at, get a job doing this, get your resume, hopefully you won't be, you know, outcast so much. But then once you release all your information, trying to get someone to respond to it, it's wait and see. And
I know it's such a long-winded process, the whole recruitment game. And I mean, I think the other thing that I'm noticing as well is that, you know, like you said before, the process of looking for work, especially in the early stages, is very similar to wanting to start your own business. You still have to do your market research. You still need to understand your USP. You still need to know who your audience is. You know, you still need to be marketing yourself or
That's
your
right.
business. So actually, you know, as people, particularly those who are, you know, trying to make up their mind, or they feel like, oh, I feel more secure if I have a job, they can still start on that journey. You know, it doesn't have to be an either or situation. It can be an and that they can keep an open mind and run with, you know, maybe emphasize one, but keep in mind that actually as they're going through this, they're tuning in to what organizations need, you know, what problems could they be solving, and whether or not there's an opportunity there to build a business around that, as they are also looking for work potentially. That's another way of looking at it.
Absolutely. And I would really want to spell that out. You
Yeah.
reminded me, you know, another option for people who would be concerned about working alone is, particularly in a community like I'm envisioning, they can meet others there that would have similar interests and realize we could form a little team here, still
Yeah.
work on our own, but, you know, we'll be remotely connected and support each other, and we'll all serve the same purpose, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And you might find that people will have complementary skill sets as well.
You
So
bet.
absolutely. So I'm just wondering, like, in terms of, we've covered quite a bit. Actually, you've preempted me in terms of some of the questions I was going to ask you. But so I think in terms of what or who has helped you the most on your journey so far, you know, when in your quest to start a business, anyone or anything come to mind?
Well, that's it's hard for me to pinpoint a person, but I do believe that that earlier experience I had in outplacement was the one foundation that gives me confidence now to become a coach that I want to be. It's a different, well, the coaching is very similar because it is career management that I'm talking about, and yet it's using technology. I would have become an independent coach back then if the internet, I mean, we're talking about the 80s now, it just wasn't as available in terms of all of the technical features we have now to work with. So my vision of being a coach then was inviting people to my home office and having sessions, and I thought that's not something that appeals to me. But then after going into left field for so long and getting completely away from technology, I had to really roll up my sleeves and take a lot of courses and programs and read books. And even today, I'm involved in other programs outside of Mighty Networks. like YouTube. I'm learning about that now, and I have to get my cameras and things to go online and do it better. So it's a continuing learning process. And part of my concern, and you reminded me of it when we talked about anything that we could possibly do jointly, and you asked about, do I have a coaching credential? And I don't have an official coaching credential, but I feel the combination of my overall experience coming out of outplacement, starting my own thing, and having a convincing offer to other people, and then proving that it works is enough to make it happen. So it's that, and I'll share one other thing. This is very personal, but not many people know this. But when I came out of high school, I joined the Navy. I didn't know what I would do in the Navy, but I just knew back then it was a compulsory obligation. You had to do it or you're going to be drafted. So Buddy and I joined the Navy, and I ended up becoming a medic. They sent me to a medical school in San Diego. They ask you, what do you want to be in the Navy? Because we do all these functions, and if you have an interest, we'll put you in that area. And I said, when I go to college, I'm going to be in business administration, so I don't know where you're going to put me. I ended up being a medic, and I thought, oh my God, I don't even like getting shot, so what am I going to do? But then I ended up being attached to the Marine Infantry at Camp Pendleton, because the Marine Corps doesn't have their own medics. They have to get them from the Navy. And I ended up going to Okinawa for 13 months. Good experience. I worked in an operating room with doctors and stuff. Then the Vietnam War broke out when I was over there, and they put us on a ship for 45 days floating off the coast, thinking that we may land over there. And that was, we'd rather go to war than be on that damn ship for that long. And then I got sent home and then directly back to Vietnam. And I was there 6 months before we got caught up in a big ambush battle one day, and that's where everything was on the line in terms of all the training that I had to put it to work. So I was out in the middle of the ambush, taking care of Marines that were fallen already and seriously wounded. But in the process, I got wounded myself, and that's a long story. But I came out of that, went home, and I was getting ready for college. It was summer, and I was working a summer job, and I got a call from the Pentagon. I thought, maybe I wasn't supposed to be discharged. What's wrong? And they said, no, it got hung up in paperwork after you left, but you did receive a Purple Heart you knew about, but you also got the Silver Star, which was quite an honor for me. And that experience, though, served me, to answer your question, in a very valuable way, because I met other challenges along my life and journey that were, pretty difficult at times. But all I would have to do is reflect on that experience I had when I was 22 years old, and tell myself, Larry, if you managed that and got through it, what you're dealing with now is nothing. Just keep going.
Exactly. It's peanuts. It's
that comparison, that come on, you can handle this
absolutely.
one.
Absolutely.
Drawing on that,
Yeah, and you should. And that's the thing, that what I can really see and hear is your passion to show other people who are nearing retirement or who are retired, that they have so much experience to give and to share, that there's value in who they are, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I totally get that. And
I do want to serve as a role model for them. I'm an example of what I'm suggesting for them. I'm not saying I hope you can do it. I don't know if I would. I'm saying I'm doing this, and of course you have to be healthy. I'm lucky to have, and I don't maybe think hard enough about other people who may have difficulties with that or other situations. But I really do firmly believe that working from home and doing something like I'm suggesting is such a better overall opportunity that I think it'll be clear to others. Many that probably wouldn't even thought about it. And I'm going to address that in my copy points to say things like, that sounds good, Larry, but I don't know how to do that. And I don't know if I could do that. Okay, that's fair enough. But let me tell you how it's going to work. You know?
So you're starting to draw up your objections list already. Well,
Yeah.
Larry, I'm just thinking, as we, I guess, sort of reflect, as you reflect, what would you say would be your number one piece of advice to someone who is pursuing starting a business?
You know, what comes to mind for me is to advise people to dream big. That if you could dream something and you really believe in it, you can make it happen.
Mm.
I remember an exercise I did in the past from a program where, and I'm going to build this into my program, is you take clippings or do a computerized, what do you call it? I want to say spreadsheet, not a spreadsheet, but a document where you put pages of a story together. And what you could do with that is take that dream that you have and make it real in terms of pictures and diagrams and show what your life is looking like right in the near future, what you're aiming to do. I did one of those in a 3-ring binder and put it away. And about 4 years after that, I took it out again and I looked at the things that I pictured, that BMW, a boat, a house that we own, kids that we wanted, lifestyle, and then it's all happened, and I thought, my God, this is like I predicted this. But the point is, if you're dreaming of something and you focus and you're consistently, determined to make that happen, then as you see those things that represent where you want to go, you'll be ready for it, move towards it, make it happen, not even think about it because it's already built in.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to do that, have it as a reference so you can go back to it and see how effectively it works. And I've had that experience and I believe in it, and I would share that with others.
Totally. The whole positive visualization, having that clarity, that picture in your mind around what success looks like for you, whatever that might be, starts to attune you. I really believe that too, Larry. It really starts to attune all your senses to look for those opportunities that help move you towards what you are pursuing to get where you want to be. Yeah, it's a really good, excellent piece of advice.
And then, of course, never give up because
well, yeah, it's a hard one, that one. That's a hard one. Sometimes, I don't know, sometimes people, it's like a bad relationship. Sometimes you think, oh, okay, if I just put a little bit more into it, it'll work out. But then when do you know? I don't know. It's a tough, but yes, I think consistency, like you said, being consistent.
Well, and the way I look at that is, it is a journey. You don't reach that destination. You've got to accept it as you're moving towards something that you want. And wherever you are at the moment, that's a piece of what you're building on. And you're going to move forward from there. So what I say is, what's important in life is not where you are at the moment, but where you're going. And if you keep that perspective, it's like when we were working on the horse farm, I knew that this wasn't the life that I imagined. This is a step taking me to get closer to it. All along, I was just carrying with me my dream of becoming a coach. All along, I'm thinking, okay, I'm painting, I'm doing this and that, but I'm studying like crazy in the background every night about this coaching practice that I'm going to develop.
That's right.
And then I finally put that aside. I said, okay, I'm through with that. No more of that work anymore. And, for the last several months now, I've been inside working on the computer, getting this program developed. And fortunate the timing because this damn virus broke out and I should be inside anyway. And it's hardly changed for me at all. But
yeah.
And of course, we've got income and, we're in pretty good shape. So we're lucky. But I don't know what's going to happen with the world after the virus goes and we've got to put everything back together again. It's going to be a mess.
Well, that's the $1 billion question, isn't it? What's going to happen at the end of this?
We've
But
never seen
listen,
anything like it. It's crazy.
I know, totally unprecedented. Your piece of advice around keeping that bigger vision and not giving up are really key, especially now. We all need something to be looking forward to be moving towards.
And frankly, this circumstance has given people a lot of respect for working online and
Yeah,
communicating like this, you know.
yeah,
So I think
absolutely.
that that'll help raise the favoritism of this style of connecting and working.
Yeah,
So it's in our favor, I think, to convince people this is the way of the future. Let's take advantage of it.
exactly, exactly. Hey, well, Larry, thank you so much for your time. I mean, that was a really fascinating conversation. I thank you so much for sharing about your time in Vietnam as well. That is so new, and it's an incredible lesson learned during that period, which has obviously held you throughout your life, and been a guiding light. Actually, I can really see that. But
See, that's something that was tough to go through, like we're doing now, but it has
yeah,
those lessons for you too. So
it does. Yeah.
there are silver linings out there.
Well, on that note, Larry, thank you.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was great speaking with you.